We are approaching 6:30. We are at Longleaf Swan in downtown Raleigh. Alongside Joe Giglio, I'm Joe Ovies. It is an OG after dusk. Not quite dark yet. Not quite
about
dark.
An hour till sunset.
Yeah, a little bit.
The sun just set on Carolina's season, though. Unfortunately,
the sun seems to be setting on the ACC in general, as Duke is the lone ACC squad remaining in the NCAA tournament. But yes, the sun has set on North Carolina's season with a loss to Ole Miss. Look at that, Sean Padula. I know a lot of Carolina fans were trying to act like Sean Padula wasn't the Carolina killer, but last time I checked, dude had over 20 points and what I would chalk up as the dagger in this game, as Carolina once again found itself in a typical game they've had this season against a Q1 opponent. This was a Q1 game, right? Yeah. This is a Q1 game. They got down to a massive deficit. I think they were down by 22 in this game, 22, 23 in this game to Ole Miss. I don't have it right in front of me, but I know it was at least in the 20s in this game against Ole Miss. But as has been the case for Carolina all season long, they find themselves back in this game, right down to the wire, but it just wasn't enough to get over the hump, and they get knocked out in the NCAA tournament by Ole Miss, which we're just here to talk about Carolina basketball, Joe. We are not here to talk about Ole Miss basketball. But yeah, look, I don't want to oversimplify what happened in the NCAA tournament game. I think the disappointment would be in that they were clearly motivated. They put the hammer down in the first 4 game at Dayton. You would think that would have some sort of carryover effect. But no, this is very much a they are who we thought they were type situation for the Tar Heels in their loss to Ole Miss today.
well, first of all, shouts to the UNC fans who were kind of screaming at the end of that San Diego State game, please save it for the next round. Because the way that this game started, you know, I don't want to say this was the way the script goes in the second half where they come back and they're down 2 and then Padula hits the 3. That is familiar. But the first half of this game, Ole Miss was just banging threes. Like they got out so quickly on them that, to your point, there was no carryover from the first 4 game. But it was also just kind of like maybe just Ole Miss is a little bit better.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So shouts to our guy, Chris Beard. Shouts to Jamin Brakefield, who becomes the second Duke transfer now to have a win over Carolina this year. And he hits the over. He scored 12 points.
As Joseph pointed out, did anybody check Breakfield's sneakers?
They
Blue
should've.
Devil for life. Speaking of apparel,
But that's but this is indicative.
Ken's not happy about the shirt choice yesterday.
I know, but this is indicative of where the ACC is.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Padula, Virginia Tech transfer. Brakefield, Duke transfer. Like, how many times do we go through an ACC team and go, look, they got this guy from the SEC.
Yeah.
There's one, Van Allen Lubin, and that's it. I mean, he's good. He's good enough, but I don't know. I look at this and I just say, this is kind of them stepping up in weight class, and this is what happens when you step up in weight class.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You would think.
And Dre Davis, who scored. I feel like there's so many kids here. I'm going to watch.
Yeah, watch your language, please.
Dre Davis. Louisville literally has 3 guys from Dre Davis is a Louisville transfer.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 players that they had in double figures today.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia Tech, Louisville, Duke. You cannot make this up.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of indicative of where the ACC is. You're telling me Padula got a nice chunk from Ole Miss.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
But I look at this, to transition this to Carolina. I'm watching an Elliot Cadeau commercial for Marriott, which has got to just drive every Carolina fan crazy. My hot take and bold prediction is this is the last game Elliot Cadeau plays for Carolina.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
And I'm not blaming him for today. I'm just saying in general,
although
he does not hit the standard of a Carolina point guard. And the real generals, the real guys who run Carolina basketball.
Yeah.
Ray Felton, Ty Lawson, Kendall Marshall. You know, unfortunately for Carolina's point guards is there's a standard there, and the standard is the standard. And Elliot Cadeau does not meet that standard.
Yeah, to your point, 35 minutes today, 4 points, right?
He had 8 times.
He had 8 assists.
And 4 steals.
He had 8 assists, I get that, but he was 1 of 8. He was 0 for a good chunk of this game, and 1 for 3.
Who was guarding Padula?
1 for 4 from and Cadeau all season long has had issues where
targeted.
He has been targeted. He has been targeted not just defensively, but he's also been targeted to pick up those early fouls as well. It's been
he's got a weird relationship with the officials. For real.
He does.
I noticed it in Charlotte. There were a lot of weird calls that would go against him. And I'm like, this is unusual. And you could tell that in his own head, he was keeping markers on that. And again, to be clear, I'm not blaming Elliot Cadeau for Carolina's problems this season. What I'm saying is, when you're Carolina and you've won a certain way, even with different coaches, it goes back to that point guard position.
Yeah.
And he has not upheld the standard of that point guard position. And I think if you're Carolina, you have a new GM coming in, that person has to come in and say, well, here's where we can upgrade. And then those are the decisions that they're going to have to make, because we're finally here, Joe. We're finally here. Hubert Davis is going to coach a team with no Roy Williams players next year. It'll be the first time he coaches a team with no Roy Williams players next year.
So, well, the thing is, though, it's all in how you, because I've seen that thrown about. I know you're bringing it up, but how much of this is, you got to remember, he was on staff.
Right.
So there is a little bit of a carryover effect in that, yes, no quote-unquote Roy Williams players, but it's not like Hubert Davis didn't have a role in that roster construction that involved RJ Davis, that involved Elliot Cadeau and Baycott, right? So this is not some sort of,
but Cadeau was not this is Cadeau's 3rd year. So
it is his 3rd year, but are you telling me that right. So, but my point stands on this. My point stands on this in relation to this idea that Hubert Davis, Roy Williams crossover. All right, it's time for Hubert's guys. The ship sailed for that after they missed on the NCAA tournament in 2023. You'll remember my overall stance.
You wanted a hard reset.
I wanted a hard reset in 23. So yes,
instead they decided to shuttle Caleb Love out to the desert,
right,
which helped them
because
last year Baycott and Love were all ACC players.
Yep.
They helped them win the league during the regular season. They helped them be a number 1 seed.
Yeah.
You were right about Davis this year too. He had that look a couple of different times this year of like, I'm not even supposed to be here today.
But the money's good.
But the money was good.
The money's good.
Situation for him was, I think it clicked a little bit for him a little bit later this year than it needed to. And there were even times in Charlotte where I'm watching him going, you were the best player in the league last year, and now you're content to just kind of hand the ball off and let other people make plays. And where is Ken when I need him? Because I think somebody's buzzing in my ear. Seth Trimble played for Roy Williams.
Seth Trimble did, yes. Seth Trimble did as well. But I mean, we can play the sports Jeopardy here and play the trivia game as to who played for Roy, who played for Hubert, who was a Roy guy, who was a Hubert guy. It all blends together, and the fact that I'm like kind of missing on the Elliot Cadeau aspect of this kind of illustrates the point that I'm making, in that really what is the difference? Okay.
Yeah, Trumbull did not. So I think it's over. I think he finally gets his to your point, he was an assistant, but there is something to be said for, I think what hurt Carolina after 22 was you can't go get a big because they're looking at Baycott going, I don't get the minutes. I don't get the touches.
You're not going to get it. Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you're finally now in a situation where you can build a roster and say, this is how I want to build the team.
But it goes beyond that, right? So I didn't get what I asked for coming off of the 23 season where they missed the NCAA tournament and they don't go to the NIT. And I was very much of the opinion that it was time for you to hit the reset button and make it Hubert's guys, right? Not this crossover crap.
Yeah.
Okay. It didn't happen. It is what it is. You stretch it out as much as you can right down to the RJ Davis year this year. But it goes a layer deeper than that for Hubert Davis in North Carolina and where they are going forward, because you got to remember they never really had a general manager during that time as well. They're still operating under this assumption that how we've done things for the longest time is the way that we're going to do it. I do think that this is an off season, and I guess this is where I got it wrong. Either I got it wrong or I was right for Carolina 2 years too soon, if you catch my drift. I was very much of the opinion that it was time for a hard reset for the Carolina program, for Hubert Davis to make this program his, so to speak. The impression that I'm getting, and based on people that I've talked to, it seems that this is the offseason where it will finally happen, where we will get a hard reset in Chapel Hill, and that we're going to get a general idea of what North Carolina really is in this era. You can look, if you want to make the argument to me that it's a couple years too late, that what you're seeing with Duke is where Carolina should have been in the first place, I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. But I'm also of the belief that everybody has to run their own race. Everybody will eventually come to the conclusion that we recognize on their own time. And it seems as though Carolina is finally coming to that conclusion with Jim Tanner as a general manager. So this is going to be a very crucial offseason for Hubert Davis and the infrastructure around Carolina to see if they're finally with the program. We've spent a lot of time this season talking about Duke and John Shire and how they go about stuff. We've spent a lot of time this week talking about Will Wade, NC State, and the money and the direction they're going in, that it seems as though NC State gets it, right? That they get where we are in modern college basketball. Well, all right, this is now North Carolina's opportunity to finally go, all right, we get it, with Jim Tanner as a general manager and how they work in concert with Hubert Davis. Now, my understanding is that Jim Tanner as a general manager is its own hire. This is not a Hubert Davis hire. This is a North Carolina hire. So Hubert Davis in the future of North Carolina comes down to whether or not he's ready to adapt to where we are right now. Are they going to work in concert together with the general manager, with the budget, with House, to utilize A, your position as a blue blood, B, the money that is available to you that is very similar to Duke, and then finally 3, do you have the talent evaluation to make sure that North Carolina can go forward? I get that it's a year-to-year proposition. Hey, man, Kansas just got knocked out, right? I mean, one and done for Kansas.
Kansas has a 500 record in their league since winning the national.
And what do you think their budget is, right?
It's at the top of the list.
So this,
you can have money and make mistakes.
You can.
Carolina
So that's
money
the
and
next
made
thing.
mistakes this year too.
Yep.
Okay, first of all, I'm in the comments here now.
Oh, never
But
make that mistake.
Epifunny. It's not a red herring.
It's not.
The whole point is the structure of the program. This goes back to Theo Pinson finally breaking it down, because you people don't like to listen to me. Your shorts, the color of your shorts doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
The name on your jersey doesn't matter anymore. The banners up in the building don't matter anymore to the recruits. Okay? What matters is, who are you investing in? Who are you scouting? Who are you putting on your roster? That's what matters. In the old days, yeah. Ask any of them. Yeah, but the color of the shorts, man. Yeah, but Jordan. Yeah, but Dean. Yeah, but Roy. So yes, the structure of the program and the financial investment of the program is not a red herring. It's what matters.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think Carolina this offseason, which, by the way, starts Monday.
Yeah.
Monday. And I bring up Cadeau in this sense. Whatever we think happened with Caleb Love and RJ Davis and their love triangle, alleged love triangle, they went to Caleb Love and had a hard conversation with him and said, we think you would be better off playing somewhere else than for us.
Yeah.
They need to have that same type of conversation with Elliot Cadeau this week. We think you'll be better off playing somewhere else than with us.
Yeah.
And then that's where you come in and you restart. They have the recruit. They have one recruit coming in. You figure either Jackson or Powell comes back. You probably don't lose both. If you could bring both back, I think they're both useful players who could be better as sophomores. Such an old concept to let a guy develop. But you're going to have to go into the portal and get you're going to have to go get a star in the portal. And what your definition of a star is and what other people's definition of a star might be, you might have to recalibrate with your brain, because that's what was missing from this year's team. You thought that was RJ Davis, and it was for spurts and pockets, but he wasn't the same player this year as he was last year.
So let's see. Let me go to the OG Sports phone, shall we? Let's hit that beautiful, beautiful sounder, shall we?
919-444-2211. Call the OG Sports phone and curse or don't.
It's the OG Sports Phone brought to you by Nature's Relief. Check them out. I will be hitting a gummy tonight because, folks, it's been a day here at Longleaf. So Nature's Relief, hempstore.com, RELEAF, hempstore.com. This is from a 919.
Hello, OGs. It's 20 p.m. Friday afternoon. I will give UNC credit for fighting back and having a chance to win. Ultimately, they were outsized and outplayed, and that despicable trend that they've had through the season, that they get down early, they fight their ass off, and they can't quite get there and come back and win. Now, with that being said, for the benefit of those attendants and the billions around the world, why in the blue hell did I pick them on my bracket to go all the way to the Elite Eight to lose to Auburn? I am a dumbass. Thank you. Good night now.
Hey, man, you're not the only one who thought. And I think
This was the game that worried me this morning, looking at it, going, I do think Ole Miss is pretty good.
Sure.
And
we're just here to talk about Ole Miss
I know,
basketball.
they kind of sputtered down the stretch a little bit.
But you called
because
it.
the SEC was,
What happened to Lipscomb?
Yeah, and once Lipscomb got their doors blown off, I thought, ooh, that's a bad sign for bracket luck and all those other things.
Because the bracket luck was there for Carolina.
I think it was a favorable draw.
Yes.
But this game is the one that worried me in the sense that I think if they had won this one, they could have made a little bit of that mini run. Definitely Sweet 16. But you look at this, Ole Miss is a good team.
Sure.
Has been all year. And, the SEC is not out here kicking ass and taking names in this tournament. But there's still a few, because Mississippi State lost to Baylor today. Vanderbilt yacked it up against St. Mary's this afternoon as well. Can we just take a minute to pause here to say that this tournament has been so boring so far that the highlight actually was A, Carolina getting in, and B, beating the brakes off of San Diego State. Obviously all the ones are alive, the twos, the threes, the fours. I mean, I don't see the youth. That's kind of a horse shit first 2 days. These first 2 days are my two favorite days of the year.
Let's go to our guy, Joe Lenardi. Only team in the net era has ever gotten an at-large bid with just one single quad one win. Two games later,
ready.
North Carolina still has only one quad one win. My dude, Joe Lenardi, had that in the drafts. Ivan, who's been an active social media person, I interact with him plenty of times when it comes to Carolina stuff. Did point out, this is something that Brownlow pointed out too on ACC Panic Room this week. Xavier also got selected with one Q1 win, unless you're counting one they got into the tournament, which would be weird because they didn't have it when they got selected. It is interesting that Carolina has become this poster child, as if West Virginia was truly screwed and all that sort of stuff. And obviously, the Tar Heels had all eyes on them to back up what they did in Dayton. I got that wrong. I thought that the way that they played against San Diego State, I thought that the way that they had been positioned as the nobody believed in us, they got positioned as almost as a villain, is something that one of our Carolina listeners pointed out. Is this what it's like to be an NC State basketball fan, right? I thought Carolina would thrive in that situation. I really did. I thought they would thrive in that situation. I'm not saying that Carolina's going to get to the championship. I'm not even saying they're getting into the Elite Eight. But I thought they'd get out of this weekend.
Yeah.
Given
the potential was there for that.
The potential was there to get out of it.
Not just the way they played against San Diego State, but the way they've been playing for the last 3 weeks.
Of course.
To be clear.
But, hey, man, apparently Q1s are their kryptonite. From Matthew, who is not exactly a fan of Hubert Davis. He's made that abundantly clear on social media throughout this entire season. How do all these comebacks not prove that Hubert Davis is the problem? Horrible roster construction, yet we are in the game, yet we always go down 20 points due to terrible coaching. Which is weird because you can't say what happened against San Diego State in the first 4 game was terrible coaching. That team was clearly prepared to play.
Or the comeback against Duke and Charlotte. I mean, listen, here's the thing about people's interpretation and opinion of coaches. When you look at a coach and they don't put on a show,
Yeah.
okay, like NC State just hired a coach who puts on a show.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
When you don't put on a show, and this was Roy Williams is this was one of the biggest knocks on him from his critics. Well, you don't do anything. You just recruit the team. And his idea was, no, I coach the team. I prepare the team.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to stand up and call out plays. I'm not going to call these timeouts. I'm not going to, go through the whole histrionics that you want me to go through because that's performative. That's not me helping my team. That's not me coaching my team. So if I look at Carolina and I look at Hubert Davis, like you're sitting here saying, well, they fell behind by 20 and that makes him a bad coach. I would then turn around and argue with you, yet every time, except for the one at Duke, his team, or the Clemson and the Duke losses this year, were the only two times his team didn't fight back for him.
Yeah.
I would say that. Then I would also say to you, in his first year, they played for the national title, and last year they were a number 1 seed. So again, you can use the 2 years that you feel like weren't great as your argument. I could use the 2 years that were great for my argument.
Mm-hmm.
You just want it your way. And I get it. I'm not, Matt, we go way back. I'm not putting down your opinion of Hubert. I'm just saying you can see it both ways, right? Like even Valvano, who was the ultimate showman, he was the ultimate strategist, triangle and 2 and putting Chris Corciani on Alonzo Mourning and, all of the fouling with the lead, fouling without the lead, the shot clock, the 4 corner, you name all the things that they did to make that run. Everyone universally said, well, Jim Valvano's a great coach. He's a great in-game coach because he had to do it against Kay, he had to do it against Dean, all these other things. And I feel like that standard has kind of warped people in our area. And Dean with him too, because remember, Dean was over there putting the hand up. Dean was over there knowing the rules and exploiting the rules to his favor. And the way that the game has become homogenized, I would also say, has reduced this idea of the superstar coach, right?
Oh,
like, who's a true superstar coach right now? Patino?
It's Patino.
The 90-year-old Patino?
It's Patino.
Who, if you've watched any of his Vice behind-the-scenes stuff, is just his same, 1978 playbook stuff of screaming and cursing at people.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be a little bit softer edge in there somewhere.
Bill Self might be that guy. I mean, I'm just trying to think about
Self's not that guy. He's never been that guy.
Well, what's interesting, Bubba points out, this is the first time I've ever been happy to not have played a bracket. I would have already been underwater because, it's been a little bit of a boring tournament. I think some of that has to do with either coaches long in the tooth or coaches that we just don't know. The superstar coaches, as you mentioned. Yeah, okay, Rick Pitino is clearly the obvious choice in this regard, but let's also talk about Bill Self. Bill Self has a little bit like of star power. I know who he is. Tom Izzo, I know who he is. But after that,
they also have a distinct. Izzo in particular has a distinctive style.
He does,
right?
He does.
And if you want to say to me, my criticism of Hubert is Carolina does not have a distinctive style, I am open for that criticism because I thought that the way that he tried to play early on was intentionally not like Dean, not like Roy.
Right.
And I think
much to a mistake for Carolina because again,
and then this gets back to that point guard situation. We think of Carolina playing fast.
Yeah.
We think of the 2 bigs. We think of the rebounding. And you think of some of the things that they struggled with this year. Obviously, size was one of them. Rebounding was another. And, sometimes it's a delicate balance of being your own person, which we've seen with John Shire mostly, right? He doesn't do the same. He doesn't go through the K playbook the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason why your mentors were successful in the way that they are successful.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that you should emulate them and steal from them kind of in the way that Roy did. Roy didn't do everything Dean did, but he had his own way that he adapted and made Dean's style better. I wonder if college basketball is in such a state, though, where the rosters are so much in flux and the game, I'm going to use the word again, is so homogenized. Everybody really wants to do the same thing. And now with Tony Bennett gone, right? Don't watch Liberty tonight. Do yourself a favor. Unless you have Virginia PTSD, or you're some sort of shot clock sicko, don't watch Virginia. But college basketball has mostly become a high ball screen, clear out, kick, drive to the basket, kick for threes. That everyone kind of sort of plays the same way now.
Yeah.
Which is always I've always kind of chuckled at people saying, "Oh, Kevin Keats plays street ball." And it's like pretty much they play like what everyone else plays.
Well, you say, like, do I have to call it out when you say
No,
AAU?
you
When
don't
you say street ball? I mean, can we 1 and 1 is 2?
So
Anyway.
I would say this about Hubert. Yes. We still need to see what his definitive style is, and that should not be a thing in going into year 5 now. So that is 100% a valid criticism of his tenure.
However, let's also look at history in which these universities, with the coaches who have lasted a long time, they've had the ability to evolve into what they are. Okay. Mike Krzyzewski was allowed to evolve into what he was. Yeah. Here's to never forgetting tonight, right? Mm-hmm. He was allowed to evolve into what he was, and he also evolved beyond that after winning national championships, because that's what Hall of Famers do.
Out of a fear for not turning into his mentor.
Exactly. Even to a certain extent, Dean Smith and Roy Williams were allowed to evolve into what they eventually became. So I think it's way too early with Hubert Davis, given the success that he's already had at Carolina, for you to just write him off. But I know that's how, again, I think this is all, you can't do this in a vacuum. A lot of this has to do with what's going on over at Duke and the direction of things. From Ramar, hard to see why it wouldn't be in Ian Jackson's best interest to head home and play for Pitino. Again, that all kind of comes down to what are his NBA prospects, what's the transfer portal look like, and, of course, what's Pitino doing after this year as well. All right, let's go back to the OG Sports phone. This is from a 704. Again, when we go after dark, we're just raw dogging these bad boys, so I don't even know what I'm getting here.
Hey, guys, it's Paul. They played the same game all year long, and they got burned by that game all year long. Probably the most infuriating, inconsistent, head-scratching UNC team of all time. Literally had no idea what effort they would give night to night. Jim Tanner, you got your work cut out for you, son. Dear Lord. Somebody beat Duke, please. Thanks.
And we'll talk about the long game.
We'll get to Duke.
I was going to say, let's talk about the long game, because we're finally here for Duke.
Yeah.
Can you now pay off the shit sandwich that you had to eat by losing to Carolina in New Orleans, losing to State in Dallas last year? Is this the big trade now? Is this it? Do you get it?
I mean,
with Flagg and Knipple in this group that is playing with so much confidence. I'm not going to take anything away from what we saw against Mount St. Mary's. Other than this, they're up at the half, and they've consistently come out in the second half and pounded people mercilessly to start the second half.
Yeah,
that is coaching. By the way,
no, I think John Shire's very good coach.
That's coaching.
Also, how are you handling Cooper Flagg? I was going through the YouTube comment sections, and let me see if I can find this. So this is from Bubba. Did anyone notice Cooper Flagg couldn't or wouldn't jump this afternoon? We were here at Longleaf. I was watching that game. It was a blowout. I mean, they quadrupled them up today. That's what you expect out of a 116. The only surprise for me was that Cooper Flagg played as long as he did in this game.
Yeah.
With the Friday to Sunday. He's had
a week off. I mean,
okay, so there's two ways of looking at this. Either Cooper Flagg was fine last week in Charlotte, but John Shire did the right thing by being as cautious as he was. He even said it straight up after he had tweaked the ankle. It is not worth it. And you and I don't know if I'm pretty sure you agree with me that Duke could win the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg. Voila. They won the tournament without Cooper Flagg. Plus, I thought it was good for John Shire to get these guys in positions to play without Cooper Flagg, because you could potentially miss him in the NCAA tournament. You got the depth to do it, right? So either you were overly cautious, he could have played in the championship game on Saturday, but you decided, no, it's not worth it. And John Shire followed through. So that by the time you got to today, a full week off, he was 100% clear, he was 100% healthy, and he was going to play, and that's the end of it, right? Or You use today as a way to test the ankle to see how you feel after full game action and give it a go on Sunday. And I'm leaning more towards that, which is why you didn't quite truly see the full Cooper flag. But again, you don't need the full Cooper flag in the game against the 16. All right? Not this Duke team. Not this Duke team. And I expect more of the same on Sunday. All right, let's go back to the OG Sports phone. This is from a 252.
Gville Tar Heel. I'll give it to you guys. When you're right, you're right. You're right. Bubba Cunningham, he's great. Hubert Davis, super great. You know, we just got to accept now that in this new era of college basketball, that we're just regular pieces of shit like NC State and everybody else. You know, Bubba Cunningham is, you know, he's getting his $100,000 raise, and it's because of moves like extending Hubert Davis. And, you know, we made the field of 64, so that probably deserves like another extension because of, you know, that's just what we have to expect now as Carolina fans. That's what we should expect. Joe's right. We can't expect to be great now. We have to expect to just be kind of there. And, like, have all this money and this tradition and just be cool with being less than mediocre. And Hubert Davis is such a nice guy and really doesn't say curse words. So, you know, that's like an extra 2-year extension right there. Bubba Cunningham, you know, didn't even hire Belichick, so I'm sure he probably won't even have enough fucking whatever it is to hire the new basketball coach. So who do we actually really need to talk to hire a new basketball coach? Because apparently Bubba is cool with mediocrity. Hey, at least he was a nice guy. Sometimes just making the tournament's good enough.
Oh boy, you're right, Joe. Sometimes making the tournament is good enough. It's good enough. I get it, man. This is something that's going to be dogging Hubert Davis throughout this offseason, and how critical it is with the general manager to make sure your offseason moves, which the portal opens up on Monday. So in a weird sort of way, this is actually pretty good. We talked about this in the mailbag today. In a weird sort of way, it's actually pretty good for Carolina to be knocked out because it actually allows Jim Tanner and Hubert Davis to get on the same page, theoretically, and find the roster that you need to get things going next season. The reason why I put it this way is because I get where Carolina fans are coming from, and this is something that has been informed by the college basketball podcasts that I listen to, whether it's Ion College Basketball with Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish, who have both said that they don't think that Hubert Davis is one of the best coaches in college basketball. And because he is not one of the best coaches in college basketball, he should not be the coach at North Carolina. Their general attitude is Carolina should have one of the best coaches in college basketball, and they don't think that Hubert Davis is one of those guys. The same thing goes to, say, the Field of 68, where Jeff Goodman and the crew, Rob Doster, etc., they kind of say a similar thing, a general attitude that Carolina, their position, it is something that has dogged Hubert Davis from when he got the job. It was never thought of as that he was the answer for the job. The boosters, the fans, even Bubba Cunningham, hey, I'm going to be calling people to see if they actually want to take this job. But obviously, Roy Williams, that's who he wanted. The family wanted Hubert Davis, but the fans, and to a certain extent, the pundits, didn't necessarily want Hubert Davis. Things went in a way for Carolina that allowed for Hubert Davis to come back for next year. There was a point this year where I do think that Hubert Davis's job was seriously in question. But as they continued to, quote unquote, not do dumb things, and they simply ran into a Duke squad that is in a position to win a national championship, I think it afforded Hubert Davis another season. It's something that I think that we're going to talk about probably next week when we put a postmortem on Carolina's year with Brendan Marks of The Athletic. And when we talk to Brendan, I can kind of dictate or tell you where things are going to go in that conversation. And it's about Carolina fans not quite understanding how Carolina was not adapting to the current state of college basketball. And you have to allow for Hubert Davis and the infrastructure to get with the program before you can truly do an assessment on Carolina and Hubert Davis. And if you want to make that assessment starting next year or starting now into next year with the roster and how they do, that's fair. But as we're kind of finding out now, there was a lot of soul searching and identity seeking for Carolina the last couple of years under Hubert Davis that has finally come to roost. We'll see if it goes in the right direction. Now, about Duke. I'm not quite sure what you can take away from their destruction of Mount St. Mary's today. But this is it. Like, that's it.
They're healthy.
They're healthy.
It's important.
This is important, but
They don't play with their food.
Outside of
They
Malik,
don't play with their food.
outside of Malik Brown, yeah, they don't play. They don't play with their food. As Adam Lim points out, I suggest that McNeese State is an honorary representative of the ACC right now because that's it, man. That's it. That's it. It's Duke. That's where we're here. Louisville, Clemson, bad outs for them.
It was a bad year for the ACC from 2 through 18. It just was. Louisville was a nice story, but you know how I feel. If you don't have success in this tournament, I just don't know how you consider your season a success. I just don't. Now, given where Louisville was, I'm certainly willing to listen to that argument. But this sport, let's take a second here to appreciate what Dean Smith did in making the Sweet 16 all of those years in a row. And that is why Carolina fans have the mentality that they do, is because Dean went from 80 until he left, until he left, of going to the Sweet 16 every year. So that was his basement. Every year we're going to win 2 games in this tournament.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just don't see. Well, Gonzaga has a streak right now that I suspect ends this year, but stranger things have happened. But I think it's just hard. It's harder now than it was even then, even though the teams were better, because Carolina had a built-in advantage of that name brand, of the Hall of Fame coach, of Jordan, of all the things that went with it. Those advantages are gone, and I think that's what this year Carolina fans learned. You don't like it when I call you normal, but to be fair, Hubert has been better than normal.
He has, yeah.
In 4 years. I know people were like, oh, Keats had 8 years. It was, we want to go rehash all that. We don't have to. But if you look at Hubert's 4 years now, I mean, that hasn't been normal. It's been pretty good.
Right.
I get it. It's not what you want. It's not what you expect.
Right.
But you have to listen to me. 94. Thank you, Rodney. Billy Curley with the Boston College Eagles. You're right. So it was 13 years in a row, which is amazing, right? I think if that's what you learn this year, is A, you don't want to be normal, and B, how do we get around not being normal? How do we get around fixing? That's why I think this whole general manager is important. It is germane to the conversation. And to going back to what your takeaway from 22 was, when Mike lost to Carolina, he set John Shire up in a way to continue their dynasty.
It was a clean break.
He set him up, though.
Yeah, he did.
And their structure, they went and hired someone from Nike to be their general manager.
Yeah.
I sit here and marvel that they have their best player, their generational recruit, has a deal with New Balance, and yet their Nike general manager was still obviously instrumental in them landing Cooper Flagg and the talent that they have. So when you realize Carolina is fighting up against their own standard and what Duke is doing, I get that. I think everyone should be on the same page of understanding what this year was about. It was learning that the old way is dead and that you need to adapt. And part of adapting is having the type of infrastructure that you're not just hoping and wishing that the color of the shorts and the banners in the ceiling are what going to get you the new next big thing.
From a 336 text, hey, at least the Heels can move on from the season and hit the portal early, but who do they even keep from this roster? Maybe Powell, Lubin, Trimble. I'm personally ready for Cadeau to walk. That is a common theme that I've seen from Carolina fans online. Most importantly, can UNC recruit some personalities that are not so laid back? I feel like it's the number one reason they went down by a large margin so early in these games. Yeah, I think that comes down to, do you have that dog in you, which is something that Carolina has lacked for the last couple of years, if we're being honest. They've kind of lacked that dog. Maybe Caleb Love was that dog. I don't know. Let's go to a 919 again. I'm just kind of raw dogging these phones on the sports phone.
Giglio, this is something I don't get about you. Like, you swear up and down that the 1984 UNC team is the best UNC team of all time. But then you go and say if you don't have success in the tournament, then your season can't be a success, but you can't have positive feelings about your season. So a team that lost in the second round is not as good as the 2009 team, but still the 1984 team we can look back on as a great year for Carolina basketball. I don't know. I think there's inconsistent stuff. I think the regular season happens for a reason. We can make positive memories and have good feelings from the regular season. It's what keeps us going throughout the whole year. Give me 2024 UNC where they were consistent the whole year and had a disappointing end over 2022 UNC where they were miserable all year and then got hot at the end any day of the week.
Thoughts, Joe?
Excellent point about my inconsistency there from 84. But I said team.
Yeah.
I didn't say season. I said team. That roster was ridiculous. I would argue to this day that 84 Olympic team is actually the best Olympic team of all time because Jordan was a supernova.
Yeah.
The way that he played basketball that year was preposterous. They also went undefeated against the ACC when it was the ACC. Like,
look,
but just so real quick,
Yeah.
they did make the Sweet 16. It's not like they didn't make the Sweet 16.
I get it.
You see what I'm saying? I've always said it's the best team. I never said it was the best season.
Like, I just appreciate the listeners pointing out and accepting the inconsistencies with Joe Giglio.
I would also disagree vehemently that there's no way I would take 22 over 24. There's no way I would take 24 over 22. No, there's not a single chance.
No, not a
single chance.
Not a single chance.
That's me. I respect your opinion on the matter, and I guess I'm trying to learn this year about this consistency thing. It's just not that big of a deal to me.
It's not. I think it's interesting that you have been somewhat dismissive of. I don't know. I guess it kind of aligns with your personality. Either you're going to bring it or you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I kind of learned this about you on the radio side of things, where it's like, no, and it's the difference between you and me. Consistency matters. Okay. You got to bring it Monday through Friday. You have to have a consistent energy throughout. That is successful. That's how you gain fans. That's how you gain an audience. That's what the people come to expect, right? You come from a print world where you could be like, man, I just put this banger of a feature out, and that feature is going to sit there for a long time. And you can just like write a couple of stories after that, but it doesn't matter because you got this banger feature. It's not the same thing, right? In this particular case, UConn winning a national championship would be that banger feature, right?
Yeah.
Right?
When they get in,
hey, man,
they make hay.
This is it, man. Like, it's going to get some freaking APSEs, like we're good, right? Maybe the national, the NSMA, like, recognizes you, whatever it is, right? But to me, from my perspective, consistency is the most important thing. Are you delivering to the audience on a consistent basis? Because that's how you end up gaining a following, right? And you've been somewhat dismissive, almost cavalier in this, like, oh, well, I mean, look at this team that made the NCAA tournament. They got rocked and they're out, right? Oh, that's what you want? I'm like,
Right.
you're being a bit of an asshole. Like, you're being a bit of an ass. Because it's like in your world, it's like, well, if I'm not going to even show out, then I might as well not even fucking make it. Like,
Yeah.
that's bullshit. I mean, that's bullshit. Like, straight
That's
up.
your opinion, though.
But no. It's my opinion, but I think it's the right one. I think that's bullshit.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's sports talk, baby.
Okay.
My opinion's the right one.
Okay.
Okay. That's the right one, baby. So I understand where Carolina fans are coming from because they've had a level of consistency, a level of success. Players that go to the NBA, memorable seasons, memorable.
They haven't had
wins.
many of those lately.
And they have not had those for a hot minute, while Duke is.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that causes people to kind of feel the way that they feel. And then, of course, NC State, it's its own topic altogether. But anyway, Joe Giglio, he wants those banger features. I'm Joe Ovies. I want consistent podcasts every day. Consistency, baby. That's what it's all about. Anyway, we're done?
I think so. We'll be back on Sunday. Maybe game time yet?
Nah, we're gonna be back Monday, bro.
No, you don't care about the Roach Bowl
Nah, man. We'll be back.
and
Monday.
Norchad O'Meara.
I think we're back Monday. Do we really need to do?
Don't have a time yet.
Do we really need to do a thing on Sunday?
Well, Joe, consistency with your listeners would require, if you're going to do post games, then you do post games. There's only 6 possible of them. Johnny fucking consistency.
Okay, when you put it like that, fine. I might be high though.
That's fine.
Shout out to Nature's Relief. I might be a gummy. What do we? So we don't have a time on Sunday?
We do not have a time yet.
Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up. Shout out to everybody who's been watching on YouTube. Shout out to everybody who showed up to.
They were swamped today. They were pumped today.
Curtis, take a break, OG. Monday. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, no. Big thanks to Longleaf for hosting us. I've been here since 11.
You have.
I
Yes.
did. I did not have hanging out at Longleaf for 8 hours on my bingo card, but I've had a lot of beer. I've had a lot of Buffalo Trace, and I've had good food too. Anyway, that is going to wrap it up. We will see y'all on Sunday after Duke plays because, Joe, consistency matters. We'll see you then.